Welcome in to another emergency PFF NFL Daily. Today, discussing Matt Ryan being traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a third-round pick. Sam, instant reaction on this pick. The trade. The Colts now have their quarterback.
Yeah, and I think Indianapolis is the right place for Matt Ryan to end up. This was the day this had to happen, right? Because of Matt Ryan's contract. There was a bonus that was about to get due. So this is the day for them to ship him off and for it to be most palatable for the Atlanta Falcons. And obviously, this was something that was likely coming down the line, given how in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes the Atlanta Falcons were, right? At that point, it became pretty clear that Matt Ryan was probably on his way out sooner rather than later. Indianapolis is the place that makes the most sense. You have been at the forefront of dome versus outside, right? Matt Ryan is absolutely a dome quarterback at this point in his career. The last two seasons, his PFF grade indoors was almost 20 points higher than when it's outside, right? That is a massive discrepancy. And obviously the Colts play inside. That's the place to go. You do not want, Matt Ryan was being talked about in Cleveland. He was being talked about in Seattle. Like, those are places Ryan does not want to be playing at this point in his career. Get him inside, let him do what he can do. And the Colts actually have a pretty good team around him. So, we might get a little swan song from Matt Ryan.
I love it. I love when you do the research to back up my point, Sam. That Matt Ryan has been much better indoors. Of course, most of those games are at home, but that stuff really does matter. Just knowing that you're going to have pretty good conditions. Plus, you have the game in Houston, games in Jacksonville, generally not too bad. Even though the Colts don't play well there, the games in Jacksonville, weather's not too bad. So that is a factor, I think, in Matt Ryan's end of career run here. And the thing is, look, I think Matt Ryan's play has dropped off in recent years. But it's not disastrous, and he did grade better than Carson Wentz last season, right? He's still capable. Matt Ryan's play has dropped off in part with the Falcons roster dropping off, with the offensive line getting worse over the last couple of years, with Julio Jones battling injuries and then getting traded. So I still come back to with the Colts, can they do a better job now building some playmakers, getting playmakers around Matt Ryan, the thing that they needed to do around Carson Wentz. You had Michael Pittman really emerge last year as their top receiver. They bring back Mo Alley Cox at tight end. It's an okay receiving core. I think they could still do some more work there to make life easier for Matt Ryan, but this will be the best offensive line that Matt Ryan's going to play in front of in a while. Once they still have to figure out, a couple pieces there, but the foundation is in place for the Colts. And, Matt Ryan looks like he should be an upgrade over what they had in Carson Wentz last year.
And a great coach.
Even at 38 years old.
Yeah, and a great coach in Frank Reich as well. And I think the offensive line part, the pressure part, is a really important element in all this, right? I think one of the biggest things that affects quarterbacks the older they get is that pressure. And younger quarterbacks are better equipped to be able to deal with pressure than older guys. And when these quarterbacks start to lose a little bit and can't necessarily navigate the pocket and move around as much as they used to, where that starts to really suffer is they're playing under pressure. And this was true for Phillip Rivers, the last couple of years of his career. He was able to make miracles happen in San Diego for the majority of his career, and then all of a sudden got late in the career and just couldn't do the same things under pressure as he used to be able to. You go to the Colts, you get a reasonable season out of him towards the end, and then he retires. Matt Ryan is still grading really well from a clean pocket, right? Top 12, top 13 grade last season, a grade above 90 overall. Carson Wentz from a clean pocket last year had a grade of 75, right? Disastrous number relative to the rest of the NFL. So I think there is a pretty good chance that kind of supporting cast in terms of a good offensive line, which, by the way, still needs a bit of work. It's not as good as it used to be or that it was a year ago, but a good offensive line in front of Matt Ryan with a good coach in Frank Reich, I think you could see a good year from him this season.
Look at this. We have Skull Vikings in the chat here. Really hoping to see it was Baker to the Colts. What does this mean for Baker Mayfield? We have to tie everything into Baker Mayfield, but
of course.
No, Baker's a factor here, right? If you're the Colts and you're trying to figure out your quarterback situation, I kept saying Baker Mayfield was the best potential quarterback on the market. That was before I was anticipating Matt Ryan actually being available on the market. I do think Matt Ryan obviously has a better track record than Baker Mayfield, but even if you're talking about success in a one-off season, still probably safer than Baker Mayfield. What does it say that the Colts went to the Falcons to get Matt Ryan rather than to the Browns to get Baker?
I think that certainty factor is what they're looking for. I mean, they are shooting for these veteran quarterbacks that they think gives them a high degree of certainty so they can actually make the most of whatever window they believe they're in right now. The Phillip Rivers deal was a reaction to that. The Carson Wentz deal was a reaction to that. And then this deal, it says, look, maybe Baker Mayfield has a higher ceiling at this point in his career, but he also has a higher chance of this thing blowing up and us going nowhere. So I think if you're the Colts and Matt Ryan becomes available for a mid-round pick, yeah, absolutely, let's jump on board for that. I think that Indianapolis, because of the things we talked about for Ryan, was also a good destination for Baker Mayfield. Like, I think it was a place that made sense for him to end up, but obviously that's not happening now that that they've made that move for Ryan. I don't know that Atlanta makes a ton of sense for Baker Mayfield. And actually, you're starting to run out of teams that do make a lot of sense for Baker Mayfield. And there was a report that apparently came from Adam Schefter. I only saw it secondhand, so I'm not sure exactly where he said it, but that Cleveland was talking to one team who was saying that they would need a pick to take Baker Mayfield's fifth-year option off their hands, right? That to me is insane, but that's the kind of market you're talking about for Baker Mayfield. It's not a strong market anymore. You're going to have to, somebody's going to throw them a mid to low round draft pick and pick up Baker Mayfield, and that's the deal. That's the marketplace he's got right now.
So this, it's fascinating that this opened up because I don't even know if Indy makes the call until Atlanta starts shopping
Right.
or shopping around for Deshaun Watson. Right. I don't even think Indy looked at the landscape and was like, oh yeah, we'll be making an offer for Matt Ryan until Atlanta declared we could move on for Matt Ryan at the right price. I'm fascinated that Atlanta did this without getting Deshaun Watson. They just did it, right? And said, okay, we're just going to move on and give up a third rounder for a guy that's been with the franchise since 2008. Now, where does Atlanta go from here? Felipe Franks is the quarterback left on the roster for the Falcons. They joined the Panthers and the Seahawks as the two teams who absolutely need a quarterback, right? Really don't have a guy. Seahawks have Drew Lock, Panthers have Sam Darnold, but you assume they're looking for someone else. But Atlanta joins that mix. Do they go with the bridge quarterback like Marcus Mariota, as the chat suggests? Or does this mean Atlanta likes somebody at 8? They're picking at 8 overall. 2 picks beyond. The Panthers are at 6. The Falcons are at 8. And the Seahawks are at 9. Those 3 QB-needy teams. Does Atlanta really like one of these QBs?
Or Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, that's the other domino that hasn't yet fallen. There was a report somewhere, I forget where I read it, that the 49ers had an offer of 2 second-round picks in hand for Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, A, if that's true, they should take it immediately before it gets taken off the table, given some of the other deals that are going around. But B, kind of the only place left, right? It's not going to be Seattle because that's within the division. Maybe Carolina is desperate enough, but those are the 2 teams, right? It's Carolina and Atlanta at this point that could potentially be offering that realistically. So maybe that's a domino that could still be falling. Jimmy Garoppolo needs to get out of San Francisco at some point. But yeah, like the Atlanta Falcons are now clearly, they've embraced this rebuild, the one that they kind of should have embraced from day one when this new regime came in. They made weird moves that sort of tied themselves to Matt Ryan for a while longer. They end up getting out from under that. They're eating the giant dead cap hit right now to be able to move on and grow this thing from the ground up. So they make sense to start from scratch. And whether that's a quarterback this year, whether it's a guy to just chew up the time until next year and come back for the next year's draft class, that's, I think, up for a debate.
Yeah, I am interested in the draft class though, because it is the Panthers at 6, the Falcons at 8, the Seahawks at 9. One of those teams must want one of these. I mean, they're all at Kenny Pickett's pro day today, Sam. Obviously, they're all interested in Kenny Pickett, right? Aren't they all there? I just don't know if one of those teams will like a quarterback enough, or if Atlanta, did they do the math and just say, yeah, we'll eat the money. Let's take the 3rd round pick. We're looking to the future. Let's take a shot at 8 on somebody, or let's slow play it and just understand, hey, it's not going to be a great season in Atlanta, whether it is Mariota. I don't think does Jimmy Garoppolo even make sense in Atlanta in the middle of a rebuild? Why you're just going from one last year of a contract quarterback to another, from Matt Ryan to Jimmy G?
Probably not, but I think teams at this point are very reluctant to just go into a season with nothing, though. Like that's the thing. Even if they are rebuilding, even if they started this whole thing, nobody wants to go into a season and say, "Hey, we have like Felipe Franks is going to be the quarterback this year." So you have to put something there. And if that something is a Marcus Mariota, if it's a couple of picks or a mid-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever it is, like they just want a placeholder to be able to at least vaguely sell the idea that this isn't going to be a complete misery of a season to the fan base.
Should the Falcons be in the Baker Mayfield sweepstakes here? Because look, the thing that's attractive about Baker is we still don't really know what he is going forward. There's enough high ends that maybe you could buy into him being rejuvenated in a new place.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, look at the team around. Like, this is why the Colts made sense, because they had a team that could actually see something from Baker Mayfield that he was capable of showing. Like Atlanta, that team is bad right now. There's nothing there. They don't have a receiver, literally. Like Kyle Pitts is their only viable receiver, and technically he's a tight end. So the offensive line isn't great. Like half of that still needs major work. So you're going to throw Baker Mayfield into that situation and say, hey, you just stank it up in a great situation in Cleveland. Good luck out there. I mean, maybe but it doesn't feel like a great deal.
All right, final word here. I think the Falcons still rebuilding. I think they'll look into the draft, but if they have to sacrifice this season, not the worst thing in the world. I think for their rebuild, from a Colts standpoint, Sam, this at least put them back in the playoff conversation.
Yeah, the only problem is that the AFC has kind of moved on over the last couple of years, right? Like the Colts had a good team and we're trying to find a quarterback capable of getting to the playoffs. Now everybody else has got a great team and you maybe still have a good team and are trying to get that quarterback to take the next step. Like they might and probably should make the playoffs, but I don't know how you beat Buffalo or Kansas City or Denver or the Chargers or any of these other super teams in the AFC anymore.
Make more power moves on the perimeter, Colts. More receivers, more tight ends. Make it life as easy as possible for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is officially an Indianapolis Colt for a third-round pick. It's an emergency. PFF, NFL Daily.